Okay, so picture this. It's January 2026, and the President of the United States just said something absolutely wild. He said America needs Greenland. Not wants. Needs. Like right now. And he wasn't joking around about it. The White House press secretary even mentioned, get this, that using the military is always an option on the table. Can you imagine? U.S. military against Denmark, a NATO ally, over an island most Americans couldn't find on a map. Denmark's prime minister fired back immediately. She said Greenland belongs to the Greenlandic people. Full stop. End of discussion. 7 European nations, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, UK, and Denmark, released a joint statement defending territorial integrity. The EU started talking about pouring billions into Greenland, investment packages, Arctic security initiatives, the whole diplomatic arsenal, and Russia? They're just watching this unfold, probably laughing, calling it a crack in the Western alliance. But here's the thing that got me curious. Why Greenland? Why does this conversation keep coming back, decade after decade? Because this isn't new. Truman tried to buy Greenland in 1946. Denmark said no, but the idea never really died. So today, I want to dig into something most people don't understand. Can you actually buy a country's territory? And why does everyone treat buy Greenland as debatable, but buy Oslo as pure insanity? What's the legal difference? All right, let's talk international law. I know, sounds dry. But trust me, this stuff actually matters here. Back in the old days, we're talking 1800s. Countries bought and sold land like it was real estate. Literally, the Louisiana Purchase, Alaska, the U.S. Virgin Islands. America has actually bought territory before, multiple times. So technically, the concept exists. It's called cession by treaty. One country transfers sovereignty to another through agreement. But here's where it gets complicated. After World War II, the rules of the game completely changed. The UN Charter came along in 1945. And Article 2, Paragraph 4, that's the big one. Listen to this. It says all member states shall refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity of any state. So the moment you threaten force to get territory, you've already crossed a line. The acquisition becomes illegitimate. But wait, what if there's no military threat? What if it's just economic pressure? Tariffs? Trade wars? Is that okay? This is where lawyers start arguing. The Vienna Convention on Treaties says agreements obtained through coercion can be invalid. But coercion is fuzzy. Is a 25% tariff coercion? Is threatening to pull out of NATO coercion? Nobody agrees. And then there's the big one. Self-determination. The right of peoples to decide their own political future. You can't just sell people like property anymore. The population has to actually want the change. That's the modern rule. So international law doesn't say you can never transfer territory. It says consent, no coercion, and respect self-determination. Does that sound simple? It's not. Because who exactly has to consent? The government? The people? Both? It depends. Now, here's where Greenland gets really interesting. Because Greenland isn't just Danish territory. It's way more complicated than that. In 2009, Denmark passed something called the Self-Government Act. And the preamble? It's actually kind of remarkable. It recognizes legally, officially, that the people of Greenland are a people with the right to self-determination under international law. That's huge. Denmark basically wrote into law that Greenland can choose its own future, including independence. If they want, there's even a specific section called Greenland's access to independence. Like, they literally have a legal pathway to leave. Here's how it works. If Greenlanders decide they want independence, negotiations begin between Greenland and Denmark, equal partners. Any agreement needs approval from Greenland's parliament, a referendum in Greenland, and consent from the Danish parliament. 3 hurdles. Denmark even notified the UN Secretary General about this law in 2009. They wanted the world to know the framework exists. So here's the key insight. The decision maker for Greenland's future isn't just Copenhagen. It's also Nuuk. And the people. This is completely different from, say, a French city or a Norwegian province. Those places don't have this structure. But wait, does that mean the US could just negotiate directly with Greenland? Go around Denmark entirely? Not so fast. Greenland is still part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Defense and foreign policy? those stay with Copenhagen. That's constitutional. Some Danish legal scholars actually argue the Self-Government Act might conflict with Denmark's own constitution. It's academically controversial. But politically, the framework exists. Greenland has more autonomy than almost any other subnational territory in the world. Okay, so here's the question that's been bugging me. Why can politicians say buy Greenland without being laughed out of the room? But if someone said let's buy Oslo or let's buy Marseille, that would be treated as diplomatic insanity. Immediately. What's the difference? It's not that one is legal and the other isn't. It's about who gets to decide. Let's start with Oslo, Norway's capital. Article 1 of Norway's constitution declares Norway an indivisible, independent kingdom. There's no exit clause, no pathway to independence for any region. Oslo is the sovereign heart of an indivisible nation. Suggesting you'd buy Oslo is basically saying you want to delete Norway from existence. That's why it sounds insane. Now Marseille, France. Article 1 of France's constitution says France is an indivisible republic. Sound familiar? Same principle. Marseille is just a city, a commune, within the French administrative system. It has no separate legal personality in international law. There's no referendum process, no autonomy framework, no pathway for Marseille to even theoretically become independent or join another country. France would have to completely rewrite its constitution. And the French, they'd never do that. Indivisibility is sacred there. But Greenland? Greenland already has a legal process for status change. The door isn't open, but the hinges exist. That's why the rhetoric survives. Not because it's legal to buy Greenland, but because there's an existing framework for change. Politicians can point to that framework and pretend their proposal fits into it. It doesn't, but it creates an illusion. Now let's add another layer, the European Union, because Greenland's relationship with the EU is also weird. Really weird. Greenland actually left the European community in 1985. They're the only territory to ever vote themselves out before Brexit. They were upset about fishing rights. The EC was letting everyone fish in their waters. Greenlanders said, no thanks, we're out. So today, Greenland is what's called an OCT, Overseas Country and Territory, associated with the EU but not part of it. The EU's own customs website literally says OCTs are not part of the EU. They have associate status. That's the official language. Why does this matter? Because it changes how the EU can respond to threats against Greenland. The legal framework is different. The EU has a mutual defense clause, Article 42(7) of the Treaty on European Union. If a member state is attacked, others help. But does that cover Greenland? Lawyers disagree. Some say yes, it's Danish territory. Others say no. OCTs aren't covered by general provisions. The European Commission spokesperson said in January 2025 that Article 42(7) does apply to Greenland. But that's not binding legal interpretation. So there's genuine legal uncertainty. And that uncertainty? It's a crack that adversaries can try to exploit. The EU is now proposing to double funding for Greenland, 530 million euros through 2034. That's a massive increase. They're talking critical raw materials, renewable energy, digital connectivity. It's clearly a response to American pressure. But wait, why does America even want Greenland? What's actually there? Let me show you why the Pentagon cares so much. First, location. Greenland sits right between North America, Europe, and the Arctic. It's geographically priceless for defense. If you want to track Russian missiles coming over the North Pole, Greenland is where you put your radar. The US already does. Thule Air Base, now called Pituffik Space Base, has been there since 1951. It's America's northernmost military installation. The 1951 defense agreement between the US and Denmark is fascinating. I actually read it. The language is incredibly broad. The US gets to build facilities, station personnel, control airspace, improve harbors, basically do whatever they need for defense. And get this, the agreement says US property in Greenland can be removed free of any restriction. They plan for flexibility, so America already has massive military access to Greenland. Through a treaty, no purchase necessary, they've had it for decades. Second reason, the Arctic is opening up. Climate change is melting ice and creating new shipping routes. New strategic competition. Russia and China are both racing to dominate Arctic resources and routes. America doesn't want to be left behind in that race. Third, rare earth minerals. Greenland has deposits of critical minerals needed for electronics, batteries, and green technology. Right now, China dominates the rare earth supply chain. Having access to Greenland's minerals could change that strategic equation. So when you add it all up, defense, Arctic routes, minerals, Greenland looks incredibly valuable, but that doesn't mean you can buy it. Okay, so let's get practical. If buying Greenland is basically impossible, what could the US actually achieve? 5 scenarios. Scenario 1, status quo plus. Expand existing military agreements. More bases, more investment, more contracts, no sovereignty change. This is the most realistic path. America gets what it actually needs: access, presence, influence, without the political nightmare of annexation. Scenario 2, long-term leases. Think Hong Kong style. Lease specific areas for 50 or 99 years. No sovereignty transfer, just usage rights. Historically, this model has worked. It's legally cleaner because you're not claiming ownership, just renting. Lower international backlash. Scenario 3, Greenland becomes independent, then signs a special relationship with the US. Like Palau or the Marshall Islands, these Pacific nations are independent but have compacts of free association with America. The US handles defense, they stay sovereign. But here's the thing, Greenlanders would have to want this. Both independence and a US security deal. That's not guaranteed at all. Scenario 4, an actual purchase treaty. Denmark and Greenland both agree to transfer sovereignty. In theory, possible. In practice, nearly impossible. You'd need Danish parliament approval, Greenland parliament approval, a Greenland referendum, no coercion claims, and NATO wouldn't collapse. The political cost would be astronomical. Denmark would be accused of selling its people. The EU would face an existential credibility crisis. Scenario 5. Economic coercion so intense that Denmark feels forced to negotiate. Tariffs on Danish goods. Threats to pull US troops from Europe. This is the scariest scenario. Because even if it worked, any resulting deal would be legally contested as coerced. Permanently delegitimized. And the alliance damage? Incalculable. NATO allies would never trust America the same way again. Russia would celebrate for years. Here's something most people don't know. America tried to buy Greenland before. In 1946, right after World War II, Secretary of State James Burns offered Denmark $100 million in gold. That was serious money back then. Denmark said no, but here's the important part. America didn't walk away empty-handed. 5 years later, they got the defense agreement instead. They got bases. They got radar installations. They got free access for military operations. Everything they actually needed without buying anything. That's the historical lesson. The purchase attempt failed. But the strategic partnership succeeded for 75 years and counting. So where does that leave us? I think the Greenland debate isn't really about buying territory. It's about something bigger. It's about whether national security justifies pressuring allies, whether economic leverage can override sovereignty. Where the lines are, it's about what self-determination actually means for Greenlanders. Does it only mean independence? Or could it mean choosing a new partner? And it's about the Western alliance itself. Can it survive when members threaten each other? What does NATO even mean then? The Danes are right that Greenland belongs to its people. The Americans are right that the Arctic matters strategically. But we want it, so we'll take it, isn't how the rules-based international order is supposed to work. That's the whole point. The irony is painful. America built that international order. America wrote those rules, and now America is testing them. So here's my question for you after hearing all of this. Where's the line between legitimate pressure and unacceptable coercion? If tariffs on cheese aren't coercion, but military threats are, what about tariffs specifically designed to extract territorial concessions? And honestly, if you were Greenlandic, what would you want? More autonomy from Denmark? Independence? Partnership with America? Something else entirely? Nobody's really asking them that question in good faith, and maybe that's the most important problem of all. That's all I've got for today. What do you think? Drop it in the comments. And as always, today's story ends here.